The bigger the government is, the more expensive it is, the less free we are as Americans.
Now, you say the country must go through radical changes, and one of those radical changes is to institute a policy where congressmen now work part-time. Well, explain it.
You know, we used to pay farmers not to grow crops. Let's make congressmen to stay out of Washington, D.C. Mark Twain said that our liberty, our wallets are safest when the legislature is not in session. We proposed several ideas in the book about how can we revamp Congress. For example, balanced budget amendment in the Constitution. It's in our state constitution. Supermajority to raise taxes. It's in our constitution. Line item veto to get rid of the earmarks and other reforms so they don't keep piling on the debt. They're already above $14 trillion. The most radical idea? They used to be a part-time Congress. Make them part-time, give them term limits. Don't let them become lobbyists when they have to live under the same rules and laws they pass for the rest of us. Maybe you'd see some more common sense coming out of Washington, D.C. Instead, you've got a permanent governing political class. You've got a group of politicians that come to Washington, they promise to change the culture, they become a part of the problem, it becomes a revolving door, they become lobbyists, nothing ever happens. This won't change until we have structural reforms. It's what the Founding Fathers intended. And you look at every state, the ones with full-time legislators, more likely to have higher taxes, more spending. And this is a fundamental truth. We describe this in the book that for every dollar they spend, every tax they raise, every power they enforce, every time you expand the central government, you retract, you contract our liberties, our freedoms. The bigger the government is, the more expensive it is, the less free we are as Americans.
Now, I agree. I'd love to see Barney Frank only working part-time.
Well,
I'd love to see Nancy Pelosi working part-time, but
and the balance, lose their jobs.
Yeah, lose their jobs, and okay, I'm down with that too. The balanced budget amendment, having a supermajority in order to raise taxes on the American people, I agree with those goals. I'd love to see them happen, but they seem so far off and unattainable at this point. What can conservative lawmakers do in the next 2 years to help bring us back towards fiscal sanity?
Sure, and before we get to that, let's not give up on our goals. The reality was we came within one vote in the Senate, getting the balanced budget amendment at least out to the states. And you remember back in the 90s, let's force, all these Democrats say they're now for fiscal responsibility. Let's pass these amendments and make them vote on it. I'd like to see, you've got senators from Virginia, Missouri, Nebraska, Democratic senators that are up for re-election in 2 years. Let's see where they stand on this. Are they going to stand with the president? They're going to stand with the American people. Because the voters, they said, we're tired of the $14 trillion debt. We're tired of a government that's 24% of the economy growing at 26%. We're tired of the higher taxes. The president said it was just a communications problem. He said, no, we don't need to change direction. Apparently the president just needs to give a few more speeches, and then we, the unenlightened American voters, will understand how good Obamacare was supposed to be. We'll understand why cap and trade and card check was really designed to help our economy grow. It's not, we don't need any more speeches. We get it. And we sent a message. Let's see if the senators are going to listen to their voters or are they going to listen to the president. What can conservatives do right now? I was glad to see it was a modest change. I was glad to see the Senate Republicans come on board to get rid of earmarks. I think a couple of weeks after the election, it would have been an insult to those voters to say the business, it's the same old spending and taxing as it always has been in Washington. So that was a good first step. We need to roll back discretionary non-defense spending back to pre-stimulus levels, back to 2008. We're up maybe $100 billion in savings there. We need to be serious about offering specific ideas, not to just freeze spending, but cut spending. We've got an entire chapter in the book, Leadership in Crisis, about Medicare reform, about how President Clinton had a chance back in the 90s. He didn't take it. We've got that chance again to make real savings, reform the program, make it sustainable for our parents as well as for our children. We as Republicans are on probation. We've got power temporarily. The American voters 4 years ago said, we are frustrated with the Republican Party. It is defending spending, earmarks, and corruption they never would have tolerated in the Democratic Party. I don't want Republicans to become complacent, because if in 2 years they don't show they're serious about shrinking the size of government, voters will go somewhere else. You look at the Tea Party. What excites me so much about the Tea Party, it's an organic movement, not an organized effort. This is an organic movement of grassroots voters who've said enough is enough. We know that China won't keep buying our debt. We know the value of the dollar is going to go down. Interest rates are going to go up. We know inflation is going to go up. And they said, we've had it. And they turned on the president. They turned on the Congress, on Speaker Pelosi and Harry Reid, and said, you guys aren't paying attention to us. We've told you we want you to focus on creating the conditions for private sector economic growth. Now the Republican Party has to prove that we've earned the right to be a majority party. By the way, governors are doing this across the country. They don't get to just print money. And that's why we're cutting spending, cutting taxes, and that's why we're growing our economies. We're showing that conservative principles work.